Thanks to the support as a channel member, Michael Beagles. Well, it's that time again. It's another transfer window, which means another exercise in inexplicably trying to get rid of every good player we've got at the club. This is a weird save. Hello and welcome to part 10 of Saving Man City. I'm Kevin. Coming up on today's episode, we have transfer shenanigans, a game against Manchester United, and then we'll check in on how we're getting on in the league as well. Since you were last with me, we've got through another chunk of games. As you can see, we recovered from our little wobble that we were having in the last episode. We did lose our first ever league game in the save, though, as part of that recovery, losing to one of our promotion rivals in the shape of Colchester, and this is what the League 2 table looks like. So we are still looking very good for promotion. 19 points clear of fourth place Carlisle with a game in hand and only 16 games left to play. That is all but wrapped up. But that's not really what today is about. Today is about a couple of things. Thing number one, yeah, it's only the Papa John's Trophy quarterfinal. Who really cares? What makes it interesting for me is that we face Manchester United's under-21 team. And I think it's quite interesting to see how what's left of what has gone on here. Why has it not got my normal? There you go. I don't know why my normal squad view disappeared. What I find interesting is seeing what's left of our youth system from when we were in the Premier League. See how that fares against Manchester United's current youth system. Normally, I would rotate heavily in the Papa John's Trophy, but I think as a one-off against Manchester United, we put our first team out, and basically as an exercise in seeing, have the other players better off for having spent a year and a half playing first team football for us? I suspect they probably are, and I suspect we'll probably win, but we shall see, I guess. The other thing that, of course, is going on is the transfer window. Transfer deadline day is tomorrow. We've already sold a few players. Oscar Bob, we didn't manage to get him his new work permit, so he has had to go in a cut price deal, now plying his trade in South Korea. I would love to bring him back one day, but he needs to establish himself as a regular starter for Norway first, which isn't looking likely at the moment. Finley Burns joins Liam Delap, both in joining Brentford and coming back on loan to us for the rest of the season for no money. So we don't lose a player, but we do get a bunch of cash through the door. Sarmiento has gone back to Argentina. Again, a cut price deal, really because we couldn't afford to get him to his 10th game to the club. We've talked about it a lot in recent episodes. Every 10 games he played, it cost us £1 million. So we just had to cut our losses and let him go before he cost us any more money. And then the big one, as we've just seen on there, is that Tommy Doyle is potentially on his way out of the club. Although, of course, remember that Tommy Doyle did have the opportunity to leave us back in the summer in a deal worth slightly more money than this. It was like a £17 million deal in the summer, and he turned that down. So there's no guarantees that Doyle is going to leave. I'm in two minds about whether I want him to go or not. He is a key player for us, but hasn't performed as well this year as last year. So as he gets older and we move up through the leagues, I suspect his value will fall, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if he becomes a forever player that we build the team around. He's not massively expensive in that role. He'll be good at least into the lower half of the Premier League. So if he wants to stick around, I'm not against it happening, but financially, I think we do need to move him on. We are approaching deadline day and we're still £2 million in the red. Our financial projection suggests we'll hit minus 68 million by the end of the season. We could definitely do with another £15 million injecting into that just to keep that figure as small as it can possibly be. But at the same time, I'm not going to be heartbroken if Tommy Doyle decides to stick around. I think it would be quite nice to have our captain just decide to stick with us, have a legend born out of this rise back up through the leagues in the shape of Tommy Doyle, the man who never left. He'll now leave before the second match of the episode, I'm sure. But the narrative is there for him if he wants to become a channel legend. But let's go and play Manchester United. This is the team. That is not the team. Am I really? Past Kev, what are you thinking? This isn't your first team at all. I'm not putting my reserves out against their reserves. One moment, wave the magic wand. Let's put. Past Kev has lost his mind here. Right, that seems a lot more sensible. Our reserve, or our previous reserves, who are now our first team, against Manchester United's reserves. Let's see how we face it. Quite apart from anything else, you can't make that many changes in a Johnson's Paint Trophy game anyway, because you get a fine. So we've got Trafford in goal, a back four of Doyle, Mbete, Burns and Samuel. Charles at the base of the midfield with Doyle and Taylor ahead of him. Hamilton on the left, Knight on the right, Delap up front. It's Manchester City versus Manchester United in the Johnson's Paint Trophy quarter-final. Obviously, it's Manchester United's under-21s. It's our current first team. But those players, I mean, they are all very familiar players in the Manchester United team as well. Scattered through both of these teams, anyone who manages in the lower leagues, in non-league, in Football Manager on a regular basis, you'll know that pretty much anybody from either of those 11s are players that you would be looking to sign as part of your road to glory on a free transfer. They've appeared a lot in Non-League to Legend. They've appeared a lot in my Twitch saves. So I think it is interesting, the comparisons of someone like Hansen Aaron, who has been, I signed him several times over multiple saves over the year. How does he compare to someone like Tommy Doyle? Doyle's got a season and a half as a first-team player under his belt. Is that going to mean he's a better player now because of it? Or are you better off sticking around with Manchester United and the better training facilities and all that kind of stuff? Like I say, I think I know the answer, but this is an interesting way of just testing it out. And Knight has just put us 1-0 up to demonstrate that Kev knows what he's talking about, which is always a nice thing for me to demonstrate. The newly departed Burns played it forward to Charles, and then it works its way through. We've cut through Manchester United with ease there. They're going to have to add a little bit more oomph to their midfield if they're going to stop stuff like that. I've just realised they're under 21s. They've got Tom Heaton in goal. I don't know that that man's under 21 years of age anymore. I don't think that's in the spirit of this competition. We don't have anybody that old in our team. And talking of players who've been a regular part of previous saves of mine, Hannibal has just scored an equaliser, and it's a lovely goal. And I mean, we've not had many occasions where I've come up against teams I feel like I'm evenly matched against. When we're playing in any team certainly from League One down, I feel like we're the better side. When we've those odd occasions we've played Premier League teams, we're clearly not as good as them. A Premier League under 23 team though, it's an interesting challenge, and maybe my suspicions from before are going to be proven to be misplaced, because we're now 2-1 down at home against Manchester United's under-21s. Obviously, one match is not statistically important, but it does indicate that maybe the training facilities Manchester United got, remember, we lost the Etihad campus. It does suggest that maybe just keeping them around at the Manchester United training facilities is as valuable as a season in the National League and half a season in League Two when it comes to player development, which is alarming. But then I guess you've got to factor in the real cream of our crop have actually already moved on. Our equivalents of the likes of Hannibal are the ones who left in the summer, the likes of McAtee, etc., who are no longer here. So take it all with a pinch of salt. But now we've put the first team out, we've really got to actually try and beat Manchester United, because we can't have our first team losing a game in the Johnson's Paint Trophy. That is absolutely not part of the narrative that I hoped I was crafting as part of this series. So second half, boys, come on, let's do a football, shall we? They've got Deshaun Bernard in the team at the back, another one who I've signed many times. In fact, Shay Charles and Deshaun Bernard are pretty much a default non-league to legend, road to glory, National League, League Two level central defensive partnership, who I wouldn't necessarily be able to get Finley Burns. He's usually a little bit harder to get, but Charles and Bernard together at the back, very much the goal when you start non-league to legend. Get those two at the back together and you're a happy little boy. Right, Knight, trying to make something happen off this right-hand side, but we're still very much missing Oscar Bob out there, and I'm kind of toying with the idea of maybe abandoning the wingers now that we've lost them all. It's a strange situation to be in, because this time last season I was talking about how the wide attacking areas were probably our biggest strength as a club. We had 8 or 9 first team quality wingers and just couldn't use them all, but we've kind of burned through them all in that time. We've now got loads of centre backs, and we are starting to sell a few. Obviously we sold Harwood Bellis, we've now sold Finley Burns. We've still got another 3 or 4 that we could quite happily use. But we are struggling a little bit in wide areas. Knight could easily play centre forward. Hamilton could easily play central midfield. So maybe, I love a diamond. The problem is, I love a diamond, but the key to the diamond is having really effective fullbacks, and we don't really have that. You can see today we've got Doyle and Samuel, who are both centre-backs, playing out at fullbacks. We don't really have the fullbacks to allow us to not play with wingers. I don't think you can't pick the entire 11 and not have anyone who's naturally a wide player anywhere in the team. So I think we kind of have to focus on developing either a batch of wingers or a batch of fullbacks, or maybe both, who can allow us to make these kind of switches as we move up the leagues, because this is indicating, and certainly the fact we've had our little wobble this season and more players are leaving all the time, I think next season is going to be harder than some of you in the comment section think. I think hitting League One with the amount of players that we've sold, I think next season has the potential to be a tough season. And actually, on some of the simulations that we ran to test the database before we started the series, the AI got as far as League One and then never really got any further. I think we ran forward like 30 years and Man City basically became a League One Championship yo-yo team, and more time was spent in League One than the Championship. So I think we probably hit par for this club around about mid-table in League One. And obviously mid-table in League One doesn't get the job done, but we are absolutely being taught a lesson by Manchester United's under-21s here. And I think this is possibly the reality check that we all needed. This is our best 11 against a bunch of Manchester United youngsters, most of which are never going to play in the Premier League. And we're being absolutely walloped by them. And that is troublesome. Right, Tommy Doyle is still recovering from injury, so Fiorini can come on for him. We'll bring on Katongo for Finley Burns. And Callum Doyle was having a nightmare of a game at left back, so Wilson Esbrand can come on for him. He is actually a left back who could make a diamond work. We just don't have anyone who can do it on the right-hand side, which is not ideal. I mean, this game's gone, isn't it? I'm here. Oh, poor old Lekyle Samuel has not had a very nice time at all. But this is what I mean. We don't have anyone else who can play there. I guess we could drop Shea Charles back there, who's tired and also not a right back. And then we can bring Nico O'Reilly into midfield and maybe do that and switch to our 4-2-3-1 variant. And then we've just got the two strikers on the bench. Delap hasn't looked up for it at all today, so I'll bring Anothe on, who did get a hat-trick in the previous round. I think it was of this tournament. It might have been in the FA Cup. No, the FA Cup we got knocked out of early. It must have been in the previous round of this. Anothe got a hat-trick and looked really, really good. So he's probably a little bit disappointed that after that he didn't get to play in the next round, especially against Manchester United. But he's got 10 minutes now to try and show us that he's the man who's going to be ready to take over from Liam Delap next season. United now down to 10 men, and that's just going to make the headlines even more unpleasant. Well, I did not expect us to take a thumping there. I'm going to try not to read too much into that, but I think we're getting some indications that this save might not end up being as easy as some of you think it's going to be, because that's still very much a thing. Yeah, we've managed to pay back nearly I think we started with 1.6 billion in debt. So we've paid back a quarter of it, about 400 million pounds in a year and a half, which is no mean feat, but we don't have another £1 billion of our players to sell. So I think the save just got really hard. And to make matters worse, after all that build-up, Tommy Doyle did leave. He's gone to PAOK for £11.75 million up front, rising to a potential 15 and a bit million with various add-ons and bits and bobs like that. Brings our total income for the January transfer window to 23 million. We were aiming for 50. I don't think we're going to get fit anywhere near 50 anytime again soon. Because our big three most valuable players are now all on loan and will leave in the summer. And then the next most valuable is Thomas Galvez, who's in the £5 to £7.5 million range, and we don't even use him. We certainly don't appear at the moment to have any more £10 million plus players knocking around. It does mean we're back above a positive bank balance again. Just obviously the loan payments go out today, so that's going to drop down below that again, but we're projected to end the season on minus 60 million, and hopefully that will be enough to avoid administration and a points deduction. Although part of me thinks, looking at that league table, quite like the points deduction this year and avoid it next year, because, you know, we're definitely getting one next year. So it might be quite nice to get it out of the way while we're 19 points clear and it won't really matter. But I suspect it won't turn out like that. Right, I think the most significant thing that has come off the back of Tommy Doyle leaving is that we don't really have a defensive midfield player anymore. So we're abandoning the 4-3-3 that we've used until this point of the save. If we flick back to it briefly, we've only really got Shay Charles and then youngsters who, I mean, he's a central midfielder who can play there. He's a centre-back who can play there. Shay Charles is a centre-back who can play there. We don't really have an out-and-out defensive midfielder, so we're not going to use one anymore. What we have got is quite a few attacking midfielders. Nico O'Reilly, who we've not really given any game to yet. Alex Robertson, who's played quite a lot off the bench as a central midfielder, now gets the opportunity to play in his natural position. Josh Adam is going to get opportunity now as well. Cian Breckin, who's more of a midfielder but can play further forward. So I think we're switching to this, a 4-2-3-1. I don't know that anyone's ever done this in Football Manager before. It's revolutionary. Obviously, we've still got all the various three at the back formations ready to go as and when we need them as well. But at the moment, one of our best players, now new vice captain, is Josh Wilson-Esbrand. He's also one of our most valuable assets, and his understudy, Thomas Galvez, is also one of our most valuable assets. So we've got to keep playing with a proper left back for now, because we need to sell at least one of them in the summer as part of the book balancing exercise. They might both go, and then we'll let future Kev worry about it from there. But this is the team for the game against Gillingham. Gillingham, who are down in 10th place. So fingers crossed, a victory. Trafford in goal, a back four of Wilson-Esbrand, Doyle, Mbete and Charles, Fiorini and Taylor in midfield, Hamilton, O'Reilly and Knight then supporting Delap up front. Remember, once we get to the summer, we lose the remaining Doyle, Delap and Finley Burns from this team. So the second half of this season, in addition to securing promotion, which we should be able to do, the real goal for the second half of this season is sorting out our long-term successor to Liam Delap up front. We've obviously got a few players who have played there. Dixon, Obavwudu, Wright. No, he's not right. He's Knight, isn't he? The right winger, the left-footed right winger, have all played there. None of them really have scored goals consistently. So I think once we've secured promotion, this man probably won't be playing very many more games for us, and we'll be really focusing on sorting out some experience for the next man off the conveyor belt, because we're not going to get Liam Delap back on loan next year. I don't even know that we're allowed to. I don't really know how loans work as part of the transfer embargo. We've got one more year of transfer embargo to do. And at the moment, the only players we've brought in have been loan backs that we've been offered. We haven't made offers for anybody. Obviously, we do have the one in, one out rule. So we could potentially look at some free transfers in the summer, although I'm loath to do that while we're still spending £200,000 a week on wages. It still feels like too much. I shouldn't be adding to that. I should still be stripping players out. While we've still got the likes of Aguilar as a reserve earning £20,000-25,000 a week, I don't think we should be bringing anybody in any position. My views on that might change once we get to the summer, especially because we've got quite a few players out of contract in the summer. And Micah Hamilton is probably the headline one who plays most regularly, who at the moment we can't agree a new deal with because he wants more money than I'm willing to give him. It's not necessarily more money than we can afford as far as the in-game budgets are concerned. We're well within those. I'm not willing to spend that kind of money. We've got debts we're trying to pay off. We don't need to be spending £15,000-20,000 a week on anybody when we're playing in League One and League Two. That is nonsense that I want no part of. So it's going to be an interesting summer, and realistically, we're probably going to get all the way there, most of the way there for tomorrow's episode, unless we go into administration or hit another massive slump of form. We'll probably just sail through until trophy lift from this point. We're 11 points clear at the top of the table with a game in hand as things stand. We're obviously even further ahead than that, than fourth place. So interestingly, it is Notts County down in fourth place, who came up with us last year, once again showing there's not a huge amount of difference between the National League and League Two. If you do well in the National League, both in Football Manager and in real life, you've got a good chance of doing pretty well in League Two. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Wrexham and Notts County in real life doing very well in League Two next season. But like I say, we'll look to get the bulk of these games done and come back for a trophy lift and figure out what we're going to do in the summer from there. unless something goes wrong, which hopefully nothing's going to go. I'd really like it if nothing went wrong, because like I say, I feel like next season the difficulty level is going to be ramping up, even if nothing does go wrong. So I don't need additional difficulty layering on top of that. My goal at the moment is still, and I don't know how realistic it is after what just happened against Manchester United, but my goal is still back-to-back promotions all the way to the Premier League. We'll know in 2 or 3 episodes' time, 2 or 3 days' time, we will know how realistic a goal that is once we know how much of this squad is left after the summer, whether or not we've had a points deduction, and once we've played those first couple of games in League One, so we can see how what's left of the squad fares against League One opposition. I am counting my chickens before they've hatched, assuming we're going to get promoted, but we're going to get promoted, aren't we? We've survived that last transfer window now, unless we get like a 30-point deduction, which we're not going to get because the finances still aren't disastrous. I don't think there's much chance of us going into administration this season now. And the one thing that happened last summer that surprised me but stopped things being really, really, really disastrous was we actually got quite a lot of installments and transfer things paid into the club from all the players that were sold. They weren't all just sold for cash lumps up front. I know I've sold a lot of the clauses at this point, but fingers crossed in the summer we'll still get a nice little injection of transfer money coming in, and that will help to balance the books over the summer, and then we'll see what happens next year. But we've gone 3-0 up here. We're certainly good enough at this league. Let's make a few substitutions. Finley Burns can come on at the back. We're going to take off O'Reilly for Robertson. I'll have worked out before too long who our best attacking midfielder is. Katongo, I've been playing quite a lot at right back in the efforts of turning him into one. We've got so many centre-backs. He's struggling to get game time at centre-back, despite being... I mean, I would imagine he's got a better current ability if we were able to see those numbers, which we're not. But if we were able to see those numbers, I would suggest Katongo probably has a better current ability than Robertson, or the guy who just went off Robertson, whose name escapes me. But because there's so many centre-backs ahead of him, he's struggling to get in the team. Whereas if we can sort him out into being a right-back, then, you know, it's a bit more game time, because we struggle a little bit at full-back. It's all... We're always thinking multiple moves ahead. It's a game of chess here, boys and girls. It's all about the long game, long-term planning, contingency planning, succession planning. That's what this save is all about. And at the moment, we're doing all right. Let's make our final changes, and we are going to bring Galvez on. Can he play centre-back? He's 5 foot... No, he can't. He's 5'6". Wilson Isbrand probably can't either. He's only 5'10", but ridiculously, in the space of 2 episodes, this is what happens when you're relying so much on the young players who come through your own team. In the space of an episode, we've gone from not having any fullbacks and having to play a back 3 because of it, to having so many left backs that we're playing 2 of them at the same time, and we've got a left back at centre back and a centre back at right back. It'd probably make more sense to put one of the left backs at right back and let Katongo play in his own position. But like I say, I'm trying to train him to be a right back. Oh, there's almost too much thinking having to go on. Chess is hard, everybody. Goodness me. But we should have done enough there to secure... I mean, we haven't secured it yet, but we should be able to secure promotion from here. That is a pretty strong position to be in, and hopefully that is what you'll be seeing in tomorrow's video. If you've enjoyed that, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for me. Subscribe to the channel for daily Football Manager videos, and thank you very much for watching.